I pulled into my driveway one Saturday afternoon, expecting nothing more than a quiet weekend, maybe a cold beer on the porch, maybe a nap, just peace. And instead, I walked into what looked like a wedding venue straight out of some reality TV show gone wrong. My backyard, the patio I had spent months fixing up with my own hands, was covered in folding chairs, satin ribbons, buffet tables sagging under trays of food I didn't order, and a giant floral arch smack in the middle like I was suddenly hosting the Bachelor finale. At first I thought maybe I pulled up to the wrong house. Maybe my brain finally broke for work stress. But then I saw my lawn ornaments exactly where I left them, the beige siding I'd painted myself. No mistake. This was my home, my sanctuary, and somebody had decided it was community property. And then I heard them, two voices cutting through the chaos like cheap knives. Marla and Denise. My neighbors, my personal headaches, self-appointed queens of the HOA. Marla in this ridiculous red dress, clutching a clipboard like she was running the damn Oscars, and Denise in a floral gown, so loud it looked like she mugged a garden. Both in their 40s, but strutting around like the world owed them respect just for existing. Arch goes left, Denise barked, waving her arms. Cooler by the buffet, not there, Marla snapped, pointing at some poor guy struggling with ice. I stepped forward, my pulse climbing. What the hell is this? Marla spun around, fake surprise plastered on her face. Oh, you're home early. Early? You're throwing a circus in my yard. Denise rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic. It's a wedding, not a circus. On my patio, I shouted back. This is my house. Who gave you permission? Marla cut me off with this sharp laugh. It's for our friend's niece, last minute. She needed a venue. And honestly, your patio is the nicest in the neighborhood. You should feel honored. I felt heat rising up my neck. Honored? You've trespassed. This is private property. Denise planted her hands on her hips. Community property, technically. HOA rules. Everything visible to the neighborhood is for community benefit. That's not what it says, and you know it. Marla clapped her hands like I was a child. Look, we don't have time for your rants. Ceremony's tomorrow. We'll even save you a front row seat. Otherwise, stay out of the way. And of course, by then, neighbors were gathering on the sidewalk, whispering, pointing, watching me like I was the sideshow of my own house. My dignity, my control, was being stripped away with every satin bow they tied to my railing. I tried to stand my ground. Move it. All of it now, or I'll call the cops. Denise laughed in my face. What are you going to tell them? That your neighbors are holding a wedding? They'll laugh you off the line. Marla leaned close, voice dropping like venom. Besides, you don't want the HOA board involved. We could fine you for obstruction. Do you really want that? For a moment I froze. Because they were right about one thing. Those two had twisted HOA rules for years, bullying neighbors into repainting houses, cutting hedges, paying fines. They thrived on confrontation. I realized in that instant, I couldn't beat them at their game. That night, I barely slept, just stared at the ceiling, every time I closed my eyes seeing their smug faces. Still, the next morning, I tried to do things the right way. I called the police. Civil dispute, they said. HOA board? They smiled and told me to file a complaint. Zoning enforcement? They laughed and said unless they're building a permanent structure, it's out of their jurisdiction. Every door slammed in my face. By noon, Marla and Denise were back on my lawn, sipping coffee like they owned the place, bossing workers around, unloading champagne flutes. You're welcome, Marla called out. Your property's going to be famous after this. Denise chimed in, dripping sarcasm. We'll make sure the photographer gets your house in the background. Free publicity. I ignored them, but inside I was pacing like a caged animal. And then I remembered, months back during renovations, I had installed this weird little system under the patio. Hydraulics. It was supposed to help with drainage and moving heavy furniture. People mocked me for over-engineering my own backyard, but suddenly that project didn't seem so stupid. Because what if instead of stopping the wedding, I let it happen and then pulled the ground out from beneath them? That night, under string lights they'd hung without asking, I crouched at the edge of the patio, lifting the trap door I'd built into the deck. I checked bolts, oiled the hydraulics, widened the tilt angle. Just a few degrees, enough to turn smug faces into panic. I even set up hidden cameras in the hedges and gutters. If they tried to spin this, the world would see the truth. The morning of the wedding was disgustingly perfect. Sunlight, fresh flowers, guests in suits and dresses spilling across my lawn like they'd bought tickets. The buffet overflowed with roasts and pastries. The air smelled of butter and champagne. And finally, the queens arrived. Marla in fire engine red, Denise dripping in floral print and jewelry, barking orders, snapping at caterers, preening like royalty. Neighbors whispered on the sidewalk, waiting for me to explode. But I stayed calm. The bride came out trembling, the groom looking proud. Guests hushed as the quartet tuned. And there I was, crouched by the hidden lever, every nerve lit up. Timing mattered. I had to wait until silence blanketed the crowd, until every eye was locked on the vows. The officiant cleared his throat. The bride's veil shimmered. Amanda raised her clipboard. Denise clutched the bride's arm like she owned her. I pulled the lever. A deep metallic groan rolled under the patio. At first, just a vibration, then a sudden tilt forward. Chairs screeched, dominoing across the floor. Plates crashed. Champagne bottles rolled. Guests slid helplessly, arms flailing, suits smeared in gravy, dresses ripped on toppled food. The bride screamed as her veil tore free, petals flying like confetti, while the groom collapsed beside her in a tangle of satin. And at the center, Marla's clipboard launched into the air as she toppled into the buffet she guarded like treasure, covered in roast beef and frosting. Denise flailed, grabbing a chair that slid with her, crashing flat into spilled wine and pasta, her floral gown smeared like a bad painting. Screams, curses, laughter. It was chaos. Some guests clawed their way uphill. Others gave up, rolling in heaps at the base. Kids cried with frosting smeared across their cheeks. The quartet abandoned their instruments, a violin snapping as it hit the ground. I stood back, watching with grim satisfaction. My cameras captured every second. No one could twist this as anything but what it was, arrogance collapsing under its own weight. Marla clawed upright, hair undone, face red with fury. "What did you do?" she shrieked, scanning the crowd. Denise sobbed, mascara streaking. "Fix it," she screamed, as if I could reset the universe. But their humiliation was already complete. The bride's family screamed at them, the groom's relatives shouting back, fingers pointing, blame flying. "You promised everything would be perfect," someone yelled. Phones were out, recording, live streaming, and I didn't have to say a word. By the time it ended, my patio looked like a battlefield. Food smeared, chairs broken, arch collapsed. And in the middle, the so-called queens stood ruined, their empire toppled in seconds. Later that night, videos went viral. Clips of Marla face first in cake, Denise sprawled in gravy, the bride shrieking as her veil flew away. People dubbed them the HOA wedding planners from hell. The board, embarrassed, fined them for unauthorized use of property. Guests demanded refunds. The bride's family threatened lawsuits. And me? I sat on my porch with a beer, listening to crickets, finally feeling my dignity return. A few days later, I passed them on the sidewalk. Marla in sweatpants, Denise silent, both avoiding my eyes. No longer queens. Just two women who thought they were untouchable until the ground shifted beneath them. Now, maybe you think I went too far. Maybe you think I did exactly what had to be done. But here's my question for you. If your neighbors invaded your home, twisted rules, mocked you in front of the community, would you fight them with laws and paperwork? Or would you pull the lever? Tell me down in the comments. I want to know where you stand on this one.